All right, we're back. I was lazy, so I haven't been making a video. So we're gonna do a bowl today. Um, we start with this cylinder. We're gonna do a natural edge cut right here. The bark is still on. With the natural edge, there's a Cambium and Precambium layer. I always use super glue to try to keep this layer from separating. Um, I think it really helps keep the bark from flying off. So basically we start with a cylinder, and like I said before, I've always turned between centers. That way you can adjust this, you can make this so it's pretty straight. If you start with a faceplate, which lots of people do recommend, that's the best way to start. You do waste a lot of material, but that's the best way to start. I like to start between centers. And what we're going to do is we're going to tighten everything up. I'm going to take a couple cuts and we're going to go from there. All right. So basically same thing. We want to do, get this, rock it back and forth. That will drive the spurs into the piece that you can't see. Gotta get my safety glasses. Oh yeah, we're back in my basement because my koa tree actually did die, so I don't actually have a koa tree anymore. I did plant another one, so hopefully we'll have a koa tree as soon as it's taller than me. Then we technically be back under my koa tree again. So this is oh, we can talk about this. This is just a bowl gouge. Unlike lathes, if you have a big lathe, you can turn small things, but if you have a small lathe, you cannot turn big things. The opposite, I think, is true for a gouge. This is a 3/8 gouge, and it depends on where your gouges are made as far as the width. The people not in the United States, they measure this as your gouge width, and the Americans, Canadians, we measure the shaft size as the size of your bowl gouge. So this being 3/8, that's made in England. This is actually a 1/2 inch gouge if you measure it by the American standard. So just be aware of that, that when you do buy a gouge, it depends on where you have it made, the actual thickness. Getting back to the gouges, I think if you have a small gouge, you can do more. If you have a big gouge, like a 1-inch gouge, you probably can't do a bowl like this that's small. So with a small gouge, you can make big things. If there's one size of gouge, this will be it. 1/2 inch, 3/8, whatever you want to call it. If I had only one gouge, this is the size. So basically, we get this started up. We're gonna get the basic bowl shape. Basically, you're going to do this over and over and over again. So I'm going to stop this. I'm going to put it on geez, can't remember. Time lapse. Now I'll cut it out. Okay, I just roughed that off. I left the tenon on here. We can talk about chucks and tenons. Again, this is my way of turning. There's other ways of turning. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. This is just the way I actually like to turn things. This is a dovetail chuck. Of course, it's all dirty and everything, but these have a dovetail shape in it, which means they're angled like this. Embarrassingly, when I first started turning and I first got a chuck, I made the mistake of turning a nice long tenon, and I was having the wood sit here on the base, which is wrong. Okay, I've lost several pieces because if you have it touching the bottom here, your piece can actually wedge itself out. So basically, the chuck sits on this jaw surface here. So when you turn your bowl or your spigot, tenon, spigot, it sits on this surface right here. So this surface needs to be a flat surface. This, if you read the jaw directions, and I read it because I kept losing pieces because I was putting it on the wrong way. The dovetail manufacturers say to make this a straight cut. What that generates is when your dovetail bites into the chuck, the tenon, because of the dovetail, it actually compresses the wood and it forces the face of the jaws into the face where your bowl sits. So that's the discussion. Also, I think I mentioned it before about serrated jaws and dovetail jaws. I always like to twice turn everything, and if you use a dovetail, it doesn't smash the wood, and you can take it off and put your thing off after it dries and relaxes. I think even if you use a dry piece of wood, that you shape a bowl and the stresses in there relax, and it does sometimes move, and I like to twice turn bowls. Anyway, so the dovetail jaws allow you to get a nice second chance, well, third, fourth, whatever, how many times you want to do a return. And the serrated jaws, if you do put it back, they may or may not line up because the serrations are going to crush all of the fibers, right? Anyway, that's my little spiel there. Get rid of this. Mount our chuck. Seems to be loose. Oh. Okay, sorry, I had to go hunt for my chuck key. Okay, you guys saw this? I kind of flashed this. This is just a go, no-go gauge, and what that does is if you make it the size of your chuck, this is when you're turning your foot or your tenon, it's an easy way. You just don't have to guess. Although actually after a while you get pretty good at guessing. I like to lightly seat that, give it a turn, make sure that it is sitting on that face. Another option is to use your tailstock and get it in there and cinch up everything up real nice and tight. So this, leaves that mark there. That mark becomes very important later on when you do want to do things further. If you have to realign everything, that mark becomes important. And you already have it from turning centers, right? I mark my number one jaw. This is my number one jaw with a pencil. If you use a Sharpie and you forget to turn your stuff, sometimes Sharpie marks, the Sharpie itself dissolves and disappears, so you don't see it later. All right, so this is usually the second step on turning a bowl. Get your gouge, and right now, if I turn this, it may or may not spin true. That's because it may not spin true. So anyway, so I take one little light cut pass. be careful here. You always want to cut downhill. I showed you a little bit of a, this is called a shear scrape cut. Usually you want to go downhill, okay, but the shear scrape, you hold the gouge like this, and you use that wing. You can only do it with a gouge that's shaped like this. And I would repeat that, and get that surface really nice and clean. So we tidied up that just a little bit, and this is a piece of coal. You can see that it's pretty nice. I guess you can. And let me unchuck this. So it's got some nice curl, and this is still a rough of this, and it'll get prettier later. And that's what I mean about the number one jaw and you marking it. So now if you put this on the side and you come back to it 2 years later, you can find your number one jaw in your chuck, line these two spots up, and put it back exactly where it was before, and it should line up and spin true. Now if you didn't do that, you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it to happen. Okay, we're gonna take a short break. I'm gonna set something up and I'll be back.